maybe in 10 years' time or sooner, we're going to be looking back at this time and think that, this is the time when the next trillion-dollar company was founded. And I do think that the killer use cases for AI have yet to become obvious.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're listening. Welcome back to AI and the Future of Work, episode 280. As always, I'm your host, Dan Turchin, CEO of PeopleRain, the AI platform for IT and HR employee service. If you're just joining us, where have you been all these years? We're now in season 5, and welcome to the podcast. We learn from AI thought leaders weekly on this show. And of course, the added bonus, you get one AI fun fact each week. Today's fun fact, David Rotman writes in the MIT Technology Review that people are worried AI will take their jobs. And you know what? We've been here before. Rotman cites a 1938 paper by then MIT President Carl T. Compton, who argued that while technological advancements can cause temporary disruptions for specific industries or communities, overall, they create more jobs than they eliminate due to, among other factors, lowering production costs. Compton emphasized the need for social solutions to address technological disruption, but maintained that innovation should not be feared. Compton's words are more true than ever 86 years later, and we'll have an opportunity to discuss that in more detail today. In fact, thanks to today's guest for recommending that article, and of course, we'll link to it in today's show notes. Now, shifting to today's amazing conversation, Florin Rotar is one of the first chief AI officers on the planet. He leads the AI strategy at Avanade, the 50,000 employee joint venture between Accenture and Microsoft, created in 2000 to innovate on the Microsoft platform. Florin was previously CTO at Avanade and has helped define the organization's technology vision and strategy since joining the company as a consultant. When it launched in 2000, Florin's a frequent speaker who's at the forefront of AI thought leadership. He's an advocate for the power of AI to help humans, which I know firsthand because he and I met on a panel last year. I was so impressed by his vision for how AI can be used as a force for good that I wanted to introduce him to all of you. He's a citizen of the world, having lived in 10 countries across 3 continents. He blogs frequently on AI-related topics. We'll share a link to his blog in the show notes. And without further ado, it really is my pleasure to welcome Florin to the podcast. Florin, let's get started by having you share a bit more about your background and how you got into this space.
All right. Hey, Dan, thanks so much for having me. And thanks for that overglorious intro. I'm blushing here and I'm all, I don't know how to react really. I'm lost for words. But so a bit about myself. I've been working as the chief AI officer for Avanade for the last year or so. I'm sure we'll get back to that funky title soon. But I've been in the technology space for the last 25, 30 years and, a bit of luck in terms of having this background of data, statistics, neural networks, and a strong affinity and a passion for people and digital workplace or future of work or collaboration, whatever you want to call it. Living in Seattle nowadays, though I've traveled the world, as you amply put it. And in case anybody's is wondering about my weird accent, it is a mix of some Swedish, some Romanian, some Italian with a bit of British sprinkled in because I lived there for 10 years. So that's me.
Let's start with that funky title. So what is a chief AI officer, and maybe equally important, what kinds of organizations should have one?
I don't think there is a standard definition actually for chief AI officer yet. I'm sure there will be at one point in time, but I can give you a sense of why we established one and what I'm doing. So we think that AI and generative AI in particular is fundamentally transforming our industry. The services industry, though it's transforming every single industry for that matter. But I think services is one of the first ones. And we firmly believe, our CEO, our board, that this is fantastic opportunity for growth, but also something that we need to take very seriously, because if we don't, our differentiation, our commercial model, the skills, the nature of what we do is transforming, and we want to disrupt ourselves rather than being disrupted. So that is my role and my accountability, to disrupt the company in a constructive way, to seek to cannibalize our traditional business if I need to, but then to drive us to that growth. And the reason we decided we needed a chief AI officer as part of the exco is simply because of the fundamental importance to us. This is pretty much our number one strategic priority for growth, but also because it spans so many different dimensions of the business. It spans our people dimension, the finance dimension, the skills, the operations, the sales, the go-to-market. And, we were having long-winded debates between myself in my previous role as CTO, the CIO, the chief people officer, the chief operating officer, the CFO, the risk officer, the CISO, around how fast we move. And we just decided to change the governance structure and establish this role. That was a long-winded answer, but it's supposed to bring everything together across every fiber of the company and drive us to growth. So no pressure.
Humanity is counting on you, Florin.
Yeah, good luck. We're all counting on you. I've heard that a few times as a joke, but to be honest, it's taken us. We've worked with AI for well over a decade, and with Gen AI for well over 3 years. And it did take us a while to get this level of acknowledgement and understanding broadly across the exco about how important this is. And I, vividly remember exco meeting about 2 years ago, when I was advocating for us to really double down on this and go faster. And I got a sort of a comment around, Florin, you're good to hear that you're overly caffeinated on espresso, but chill down a little bit and let's focus on the business of tomorrow, not the business of 10 years from now. And things happened sooner. We got the exco and the leadership team to try and test and use and see the power of AI, and that generated the commitment that we have today, which is great. Commitment and investments comes responsibility. So that's part of the equation.
Whether or not you realize it, you forget more in an afternoon about AI than most leaders have learned in their career. So I want to know, what's top of mind for the organizations that you're working with today? What kinds of questions are leaders asking?
Yeah, so to be honest, the number one question I get is, the first few months it was, what the heck are you doing? And what's that cool, funky title of yours? I'm joking a little bit. But the question I get nowadays is, what do you wish you would have known a year ago? What would you wish you could have gone back in time and tapped yourself on the shoulder and told yourself, Florin, do this, don't do that? I do have about sort of 4 things I've tried to synthesize in my mind around the key challenges and opportunities that, I wish I would have known before, but also that the people are asking me for, and struggling with. So one is around and the most important one to my mind is the people topic. So there is so much obsession today, I think, people seeing AI as a threat to jobs, to stability. And by all means, there is a threat. I don't want to minimize that or brush it away. But there is such a humongous opportunity as well. And what we see is that when organizations are seeing AI as a chance to enable people to gain superpowers, to become the best versions of themselves, to soar to new professional and personal heights, and do things they might not have imagined they would be able to do, really good things happen, because people they start trusting AI, that it's there for their own good rather than for somebody else's good. They start to adopt it, and with qualitative, meaningful adoption comes value. And you get the benefits that everybody's seeking for around productivity and cost efficiencies and what have you. But if you purely start with a mindset of productivity and squeezing more and cutting cost and automation, you're actually less likely to get those than if you truly start with the people first mindset. And the analogy somebody else shared with me, which I really, it's like we're all running a marathon and you might be tired and it's a long run. And, you really need to be on your game to finish a marathon. AI, it's like giving people bicycles and that being legal in a marathon race. It just changes the game. It makes it, to be honest, unfair to some extent to people who don't have bicycles, but you're having so much easier time and going so much faster and maybe having more fun as well riding a bike, unless you really want to punish yourself and run a marathon. I don't know. Sorry. I like running, so it's the analogy is near and dear to my heart. I love running, but I hate running marathons. I'm a short distance runner.
So like you, I travel around the world and talk to leaders and help them define their AI strategies. And I find that roughly half of the conversations tend to be about governance and security and risk. And then the other half tend to be around innovation.
Yeah.
Where, to use your analogy, I think many leaders are perhaps even overly enthusiastic. They think, we're about to strap a jetpack, to every human about to run a marathon, let alone a bicycle. Yeah. In your conversations, what's the tone? Where would you say leaders want to spend most of their time on that spectrum of kind of the bot apocalypse to, future of humanity is changing daily?
Yeah. I don't think there is a single good answer I can give to that. I think it varies by industry, but it also varies by who in a company. So when I talk to boards, what's really top of their mind is risk, governance, regulation. And there is a little bit of, how should I put it, a knee-jerk reaction around the fact that, they want to put speed bumps in place rather than putting guardrails in place and enable the organization to run faster. So I'm doing a lot of education with boards around, what AI is and what it isn't, and the fact that, if I can use the word responsible AI, in their view, responsible AI is a means of taming risk and managing compliance and regulations. And by all means, you can do it. But it can also be a fantastic enabler of growth. And, responsible AI being a way that you can encapsulate and encode the best version of your company's culture and make it programmatic and durable 24/7, 365 days a year. So that's on the board side. On the CEO and ExCo side, there is a lot of excitement about opportunity to grow, a wish to move fast, often a frustration with around their ability to move fast enough, but also questions around, is this really going to generate true meaningful business value? And am I just taking a stab here at something and hoping that I'll get the meaningful business benefits out of it if I make this commitment and investment? Or is this more than, overhyped expectations? And my answer to that is, yes, there is tremendous amount of value to be had, but there is also loads of unrealistic expectations. And putting things into production, it's pretty easy. Getting value out of it, the path to value is very different from the path to production. On the IT side, lastly, there's a lot of question marks, I would say, around the enterprise architecture, decisions to be made around, making choices between closed models and open source models, large language models, small language models, cost, benefit, accuracy, risk, and so forth. Just making those correct decisions of when you buy, when you build, when you borrow is really top of mind for the more sophisticated clients. Yeah, I mean, it's very different. There is a bit of digital divide between the general population, between IT leaders, between the business leaders and the board. And that's part of the sort of my remits to try to bridge.
You're talking to a large audience of startup entrepreneurs. And Many of us in and around the AI space feel like your technology partner, Microsoft, is sucking all the oxygen out of the room. Satya has made some brilliant decisions, the OpenAI investment, the Copilot strategy. I, on the other hand, feel like there is a lot of room for startups to innovate around or with Microsoft or other companies in big tech. From where you sit, what's your sense of where there are opportunities to innovate despite all of the investment and the amazing progress that companies like Microsoft are making?
I think it's all about knowing your differentiation and what you're passionate about. We as a company, we work with quite a lot of startups. Part of our job is to orchestrate an ecosystem of trusted organizations, which we can stitch together to add value to our clients. So I definitely don't think that this is just a scale and money game. I do think are needed. I think that, in maybe in 10 years' time or sooner, we're going to be looking back at this time and think that, this is the time when the next trillion-dollar company was founded. And I do think that the killer use cases for AI have yet to become obvious. And that is really where I think there is tremendous opportunity for differentiation. Whoever is going to really crack the equation around the killer use cases, the killer apps, we haven't seen them yet, by the way, in my opinion, is going to be extraordinarily successful. And if I would have a crystal ball, which I don't, I think stuff related to people is going to continue to be really important. I think there is a ton of opportunity around vertical industry differentiation. And I think industrial AI and research AI are at the very early stages of maturity. So if I would make a bet, and if I would start a startup, it would be in the people space, in a well-chosen vertical industry, or in research, in R&D, like heavy-duty research with AI, or in industrial AI.
That was not a pitch for People Rain, and Florin and I did not rehearse that. for the record.
We absolutely did not know. But I'm, full disclosure, I am biased because I've had people and the power of the future of workplace as a key tenet throughout the last 20 years of my career. So it's something I'm extraordinarily passionate about. I do think that most organizations are still substantially underinvesting in this space. And I think it's we had a brief uptick during the pandemic with the focus on employee experience, but that was too short-sighted and too short, in my opinion. So I am biased in as much as I do think a people platform is going to be the next equivalent of the ERP platform, if I can use that term.
I strongly agree with your thesis that there's a $1 trillion, maybe multiple, company to be built around the new AI first stack. And in addition to the apps layer, I see massive opportunities to innovate in the infrastructure layer, as well as in the tooling layer, developer tools. One of the things that we find at People Rain developing on top of these emerging stacks is that there's no real layer of performance management or governance or security or all the things that we came to become comfortable with in kind of a cloud first world over the last 10 or 15 years. It doesn't yet exist for AI first tooling or applications. What's your perspective on opportunities to innovate at the infrastructure and tooling level in addition to apps?
I think you need to choose your bets wisely. I mean, I have to say I'm really positively surprised by how fast the big players are moving in terms of strengthening and building out the tooling for end-to-end DevSecOps. Is it like fully fledged mature? Not yet. But I think it is moving phenomenally quickly, and things which would have taken 6 months to do a year ago, you can do in 6 days today. So I think the opportunity for durable differentiation there is going to be tougher, but there's certainly opportunity for it too. I think, by the way, the area which I would have doubled down on is around a configurable, manageable, explainable digital ethics layer. That is, we do have basic responsible AI with all the big vendors, but to allow organizations to customize it, configure it, adjust it so digital ethics as a service. If I would have had money to invest in or create a startup, that's where I would have looked at the tooling level.
I'll plug a few recent guests we've had discussing the topic of AI ethics. Professor Meredith Broussard, who wrote the book More Than a Glitch about algorithmic accountability. Great discussion on this podcast. And then more recently, an amazing CEO, Navrina Singh from Credo AI, is building a responsible AI platform, essentially a SaaS platform to automate or instrument AI ethics. Now, on that topic, one of the things that I find interesting is, we interview guests from a wide range of backgrounds on this show, is how I think what you and I have a shared sense of what responsible AI is. There's not a shared sense in the broader community about what it means. What does it mean to Florin?
So we all, everybody's showing around beautiful words. And by all means, I don't want to be downplaying those words, because I do really believe they're important. But words like transparency, accountability, accuracy, etc., and they should be part of responsible AI. But for me, what I don't think I hear often enough is that a responsible AI is a framework which is process, tooling, and people. So I truly, deeply believe that you cannot have proper, intelligent AI and responsible AI unless you have the tooling. And most of the time, people are talking about the tooling, and tooling, by all means, is important. But you also need the processes around this. And then ultimately, you truly, deeply need the people to be trained and aware and know this at scale. So as an example, I'm training all of our 65,000 people in responsible AI. It's pretty much mandatory for everybody. We don't use the mandatory word because people are allergic to the word mandatory, and I don't want it to be seen as compliance training. And by the way, we've received amazing feedback from our people when we rolled this out as one of the best things we've ever done in years, and tremendously well received by people. So the point I'm trying to make, responsible AI is process, it's tooling as people. The other side, which I really strongly believe in, is that we need to get away from just seeing it as a tax of doing business, tax in air quotes, as something which you need to do, not to get into trouble, end up in jail, or be on the front page of newspapers, and just something that you do to manage risk and your compliance and regulatory duties. I do think that responsible AI is a chance to encapsulate the best version of yourself, the best version of your organization's culture, your North Star values, and to make them durable, and basically, truly encapsulate the secret sauce of culture, and for that to be an amazing competitive differentiator. That to me is responsible AI. Admittedly, it's a mix of science and art and black magic a little bit right now. I'm joking a little bit, but it's still early days. Not as early days as 15 years ago. For my sins, I started co-writing a book on this topic ages ago. Please don't go ahead and buy it on Amazon. Because it's way outdated. It sells for $6 right now, and I don't think it's even worth $6. But we were basically writing the cookbook back then. The world has advanced, but it's still a little bit of art in this as well. It's not just a science or a process.
Florin, I've got to say, of all the authors that I've interviewed on this show, that's the worst plug for a book I've ever heard.
I'm being honest. I had fun with my colleague and my co-author I hope he doesn't listen to the podcast, by the way, because he'll stop sending me emails and cards on holidays. We had fun writing it, and I thought it was very appropriate back then in 2016 or whatever, 17. But the world has moved on, so yeah, don't buy it.
I've said on this show before, I firmly believe that every student getting any kind of degree or certificate in a technical field now and moving forward should be required to take at least one course in ethics. And it's hard to have this conversation without talking about AI regulation, but more importantly, kind of the underlying theme, who is responsible for preventing potentially, adverse outcomes of AI from impacting people?
People who create the AI and use the AI. So I firmly believe that, as part of responsible AI, as part of the framework, you need to have very clear lined accountability. And accountability meaning there is always a human who is ultimately accountable for how the AI is being used or misused. So I think, the people who create AI have an accountability. And I think most of the, big players and reputable organizations out there, they take this quite seriously. So I think, that is a good thing. A lot of times, it's how you use the technology, how you customize the technology, how you use it in the real world. And if I use a car analogy, the people who manufacture the car, they have an accountability and a responsibility to make it safe and reliable. The people who build the building blocks of a car, the tires, the engine, the windscreen wipers, they all have an accountability. But ultimately, there is a human behind the wheel, or at least for now. That human needs to have a driver's license. They need to be sober. They need to have passed the test, and they need to act responsibly behind the wheel. And I believe it's the same in organizations. In every organization, there needs to be an accountable, formally known individual who is the driver, the car. But we all need rules. We need traffic rules to make the whole system work. And I think that's what, regulation is giving us. But again, you need training. You need people educated in this. So people know when to look left, when to look right, when they cross the road. They need to know what green light and red light means. And I think that's the bit where we need to get much better as society and an industry. It's training. You cannot solve this problem just with technology. It is as much about people. And people really need this broad-based educational uplift. I'm very passionate about that. It's just we obsess over the AI. We need to obsess as much about the people.
So help me unpack this example. So an employee, let's say, publishes a deep fake to X or a platform of the CEO in an attempt to phish, credentials or something, to be able to hack a network, something like that. It's happening more and more frequently. Who is responsible? Is it X because they allowed the content to be posted? Is it the employee for generating the deep fake? Or is it the tool vendor who enabled the employee to create the deep fake? It's so easy for each entity in that situation to claim plausible deniability. That's my concern with regulation is who's allowed to do the finger pointing and where does the buck stop?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's impossible to eliminate all bad usage. But I mean, we as humanity, we are pretty ingenious. Again, I'll go back to the traffic analogy, right? If you can't stop a crazy driver to get in a car and do crazy things. Thankfully, that doesn't happen very, very often. But at the end of the day, it's the person, the driver, who is accountable. So in this sense, I would say the employee or whoever, it's ultimately a human. But, we need to have layers and layers of protection and mitigation to be able to deal with this, right? It's, we have sidewalks and they're slightly raised to avoid people from accidentally stepping onto the road. And cars have airbags and drivers have safety belts, and we have police officers, and we have driving schools, and so I just think we need to I don't think it's ever going to be easy, black or white, do this and all problems are magically solved. I just think we as a society and we as humanity need to evolve our sophistication and thinking around it. But ultimately, it starts and stops with people. And the person who does something bad is accountable. Can't say, I created a deep fake and sorry, I didn't know what I was doing, so apologies. It's the whoever gave me the tool who to do something bad who's at fault, right? Again, use the analogy. If I say go in a car and do crazy stuff, then I say, no, it's not my fault. It's the car manufacturer's fault for giving me a car. No, the world doesn't work like that. So I know I'm simplifying it. This analogy doesn't fully make it justice, but that's the way I think anyway.
We're going to be having this conversation for a long time. It's not a simple one. And I think just the fact that leaders like you are out there forcing organizations to ask the questions, that's the quickest path to a solution. It's not that we rely on the federal government or international commissions, or we have to take responsibility by first asking the question, what could go wrong?
Indeed. And I think, it's we as society and we as humanity need to work on this together. By the way, I love what OpenAI is doing right now. I was reading over the weekend, they launched this amazing video creation tool, which looks absolutely astounding. They're not launching it in public yet. They're testing it. They're trying to figure out the weak spots, the implications, and I think that's it's a good practice. Though I am really twitchy to try it myself. It just looks out of this world cool, I have to say.
That's a good segue into the last question I have for you. Unbelievably, we're about out of time. I know we're just really, it feels like getting started here, but I got to get you off the hot seat. So if we say that in 2023, generative AI shocked the world.
Yeah.
When you and I are back having a version of this conversation in, let's say, 2025, what shocked the world in 2024? Maybe it's Sora, like you alluded to, or maybe it's something else. What do you think?
I think multimodal AI is going to really open up a bunch of very interesting use cases and value scenarios. That's point number one. Point number two, I think, is AI in research and AI in industrial scenarios, where I think we're just going to see an exponentially faster and transformative approach to how materials are created, how drugs are being researched, how I think it's just the sky's the limit there. I'm so excited about AI in research and in industrials. And then I think what's happening right now, which is the experiments of 2023 and the pilots are finally moving into production at scale in enterprises. So I think that combination of three factors: scale usage in the enterprise, R&D and slash industrials, and then multimodal AI is what I anticipate. But I could be wrong. Maybe we'll see even more signs of AGI, and then all bets are off, and it'll be a very exciting year ahead of us for sure if that would happen.
2 years ago, we were talking about AGI sometime in the next 50 years. And now we're credibly talking about it sometime within the next 5 years. Unbelievable, the progress we've made.
It is indeed. Yeah, I think I think it's within the next 5 years, if not sooner than that, to be honest.
When it happens, we'll get you back here and we'll continue the discussion. How about that?
Yeah, sounds good, Ben.
Hey, Florin, this has been a lot of fun. I've been looking forward to this one. And please educate the audience. Where can they learn more about you and the good work that your team's doing?
We're all over the world with 65,000 people, as you can imagine. But, you can find me personally on Florin Rotar on LinkedIn. That's the only social media platform I use. And then, on avanade.com, we tend to publish, research and points of views and thought leadership ever so often. I'd love to hear what you think, what you all think about this, if you agree with me. Even more interested if you disagree with me, because I'm certainly not a know-it-all. I'm trying to learn, like all of us. I evolve my thinking and my understanding. So I'd really love to hear what your audience thinks and how they're approaching this and their opinions and thoughts. And yeah, I'd really appreciate the collective insights and feedback and suggestions from all the people who are listening to the podcast. Thank you in advance. And
Great
great
work.
to you, Dan. Thank you so much.
It may be a funky title, but it's important work. And you're inspiring a lot of leaders. So thank you for what you do.
Okay, thanks, Dan. I really appreciate it.
You bet. That's all the time we have for this week on AI and the future of work. As always, I'm your host, Dan Turchin from People Rain. And of course, we are back next week with another fascinating guest.